When I was 12, in the summer of 1969, my family and I moved to a small white house in the middle of Caryville, Wisconsin, so my mother could be close to her parents. The house itself was rather unimpressive. A normal white board house, built in the mid-1920s. No spooky atmosphere, or any of that other haunted crap. Just a house. To be honest, I don't remember anything actually happening in the house until I was 15, when my older sister brought home a new boyfriend, Martin Keller. From the start, I didn't like him, because he was the type of person who believed in spirits and psychics. He even claimed at one time that a spirit had told him that he would sire a child who would be baptized in blood and rule a world of madness because it was the will of an ancient god. Just normal 70s weirdo mumbo jumbo from an idiot. Anyway, one night Martian thought it would be fun to bring an old-fashioned planchette to the house in an attempt to conjure spirits to tell the future. For hours, he and my sister sat in our living room trying to call forth the same spirit that had apparently told him about the evil child. After a while, they gave up and went to making out on the couch until, much to their amazement, the planchette actually moved of its own accord. I remember my sister almost tearing my bedroom door off the hinges just to drag me into the living room to see what the spirit had to say. At first, I accused Martian of somehow manipulating the planchette until he stood and walked over to me. The three of us sat down at the table and began asking the spirit questions. Mostly, we asked the usual: who are you, what do you want, who will I marry, and so forth. And eventually, the spirit announced that they had to leave. However, its farewell message will forever be burned into my mind. I'll be seeing you, Jack. That's it. Nothing more. Just that it would be seeing me. But I still didn't sleep for 3 days after that. Months went by with no more events, but for some reason, I could never shake the feeling that someone or something was constantly watching me. At first, I would get the feeling that someone was watching me from far off while I was outside or walking to school. Like, whomever it was sitting in a far off tree with binoculars. Over the next couple of weeks, I began to feel that whatever it was getting closer to me. One night in November, I was up late working on some homework when I got this feeling that someone was outside watching me through my bedroom window. I remember working up the courage to walk over to the window and look down into the backyard. Sure enough, there was someone. It was a tall man in what looked like a suit with a cigarette in his mouth. He was standing, motionless, next to the fence at the far end of the backyard. What made it even worse was that I couldn't see the man's face, just shadow in the glow of the cigarette. I jumped back from my window as I tore downstairs to the kitchen where my parents were playing poker with some friends. I told my parents what I saw and my father stepped outside, but he found no one. My parents and their friends all laughed it off, saying that I was tired and overworked and that I should get some sleep. I nodded and went back to my room. I still couldn't get the image of that man out of my mind. Each day after that, it felt as if the man was stepping closer and closer to the house. Then, one night during an electrical storm, I saw him. Literally outside the window. I looked directly at him as a flash of lightning illuminated my room. The top of the man's head was missing from the top jaw up, cigarette resting awkwardly on what remained of his bottom lip. I stared, frozen in absolute terror, at the man for what seemed like hours, until a pale white hand hit against the window glass with a gut-wrenching slap, almost as if someone had thrown raw meat against it. I screamed, and a strange garbled laugh filled my head. Suddenly, my sister and my parents burst into the room. The man was gone, but the laugh still echoed through my mind. My parents wrote what I saw off as a nightmare, but installed aluminium blinds to prevent any more bogeymen with bifurcated heads from peeking in. They thought it would help me feel better, but I was outraged. I was not some little kid anymore, and what I saw was no nightmare. I couldn't get my parents to believe me, but my sister did, and she offered to let me sleep in her room for a while. I declined because I felt it was weird and told her I would be fine. Besides, it was impossible for me or the man to see through the blinds. I regretted my decision almost immediately. That night, I awoke to the sound of something tapping on my window. I told myself to ignore it and curled up under my covers until I realized the tapping was coming from the inside. I froze and my heart dropped into my stomach. He was in the room with me. I slowly peeked out from my covers to find nothing in the room. I then noticed the overhead vent in my room was making the blinds tap against the glass. I let out a sigh of relief and rolled over only to find what the inside of a human mouth and throat looks like. I tried to scream as the man slowly stood and leaned over me, but the only sound that would escape my mouth was a pathetic squeak. I watched as the man's tongue began to writhe and a strong voice bubbled out. "I see you, Jack." I wanted to bolt out of bed and run, but I was frozen in place. "I see you, Jack. Jackie boy, I see you. I see you." The man then pointed to the opposite side of the bed. I turned to see what he was pointing at, and to my abject horror, the top half of his head rested on the pillow next to me. "I see you. I see you." The voice laughed repeatedly, and then I blacked out. That's it. No surprise ending or anything. I never saw the half-head man again after that. My sister ended up leaving Martian later that year. She said she couldn't be with someone who had cursed her brother like that. I'm not sure what happened to Martian in the years to come. I think at one point, I read that he was killed in a botched robbery at his home in the fall of 2000. However, my youngest nephew has been claiming that he sees the man at night. I don't think it means anything, but it still makes me wonder. Thanks for sticking around. I hope you enjoyed the story. We're at the end of this one, but there are plenty more you might not have heard yet. So here are some options: my entire Creepypasta playlist, or a story that YouTube thinks you'll like from me. With all that said, I hope you leave a like, maybe a comment, and if you want to hear more, subscribe with notifications to get the latest stories as soon as they're available.